What does it mean when we're trying to tax loss harvest? Okay? So I've been asked this question related to this. Specifically, my cat is just sprinting all over the place. There he is. I've been asked this question about Nike, and someone sent me a tweet, and it said, Nike is a perfect company that shows us that we're about to hit an economic collapse. And the argument is that Nike shoes, Nike gear, Nike whatever, your sunglasses, all these things, that every normal person buys Nike. And if Nike is down, that means we're in the forefront of an economic recession. Okay, that's a lot of people will fearmonger using Nike. Okay, and so they'll sit there and they'll play this game, and then what you end up seeing, right, is you see this tweet, then you go on CNBC and you see another pundit discussing that when Nike's down, that means we're probably going into an economic recession. No one's buying the shoes, and it makes sense on the front end. It does make sense, okay? It does make sense when you think about, no one's buying their $40 shorts or their $50 shorts. No one's buying their expensive t-shirts. No one's doing these things. So that means that we're probably in an economic recession. The average person has less money. You hear about the housing market dropping. You hear all these things. Well, foreclosures are increasing. So that means we have to be in some type of recession. Maybe. But does it mean that Nike should be the stock that we're using to determine that? In this case, if you remember back to the beginning of the video, I mentioned tax loss harvesting. Okay, so a lot of people, if you're looking at what's happened, and there's a couple different stocks you might see. Okay, so you might see someone who has PayPal, you might see someone who has Nike, you might see someone who has RH. Okay, so these stocks, if you've bought them in the last 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, these are stocks that haven't done really anything. And PayPal, I think in the next coming years, is actually a stock everybody should be paying attention to. Now, in the case of Nike, and when we talk about tax loss harvesting, I will use myself as an example, okay? So I bought Nike about 8 months ago. Hasn't done anything, nothing. Hasn't gone anywhere, but I've stayed firm and I've bought more of it because I look at it as a beaten down, completely obliterated stock. Low, there's not a lot of positive sentiment around the stock. There's a lot of people that still think, all these other companies are starting to take their market share. But as someone from the athletics world, as someone who coaches and has I have athletes sponsored by Nike, okay? So I train athletes involved with Nike. What's interesting, when you know what's going on in the background, and that they hired the CEO that they should have hired, 5 years ago? They hired him last year. And he's just been in the background trying to reestablish their consistent basis, their consistent customer basis, to try and reignite what works for the company and what worked for the company when he was in charge of a lot of these different factors, in the 2010s. So now he's been in charge for about a year and things are starting to flow. He's starting to look for how can he get more market share in China? How can he get more market share in Central America? How can he get higher market share in Europe? How can he handle the tariffs? All of these different factors, right? All of these things come into play. And so when we're looking at something like Nike, and if I use that example that I brought up of myself, I have a lot of money in AMD, a lot of money in Palantir and NVIDIA and Meta and Google and Amazon, right? Those SoFi, ELF, these are all companies, even ELF dropping off what it has over the last, 3 weeks, I still have really high gains. So I will get taxed on these gains. So what I can do is I can actually end up selling Nike. Okay, so if I sell the loss that I have in Nike, it diminishes the amount that I will be taxed. And that's if I don't, in my case, I have other areas that I can sort of strategically set up in that tax plan. I pay somebody a lot of money to do this. And so it's a very large benefit. And so what I think is actually happening is twofold with Nike. I think, one, people are still a little hesitant to get back into the stock. And I think a lot of people want to see what ends up happening with the new CEO and how he goes about executing everything. They want to see what happens in the different markets. They want to see if he can grow in these specific markets. They also want to see with the shoes. They know the shoes are good. They know the gear is good. They know the quality. They know the athletes like it. And we're starting to see more grassroots sponsorships like Nike of old back in the day. We're starting to see those grassroots sponsorships come back to the forefront. Okay, and so we're starting to even see some of these more fringe sports they're getting more involved with. And we're even seeing some of their other sports, so like basketball and stuff, they're starting to unite. They're doing a better job. Even I think it was with Converse, if I remember correctly, they're bringing everything under the same roof now, so that all of the management and all of the strategic decisions that they're making are everybody's on the same exact page. Okay, so we're starting to see these things really come to light. But then when you look at a stock that has low sentiment and has just been completely thrashed, and if you look at it and you go, okay, I bought PayPal or I bought Nike over the last 18 months and it hasn't done anything, but I have other stocks that have skyrocketed, for me to handle those tax gains effectively, possibly, I will sell off some of that Nike stock at a loss. Okay, and that'll sort of protect me in a way. And then theoretically, you could make the argument that, okay, if I sell it at $63 and it drops to 55, I'm going to come back in at 55 after the tax season, after the new year changes. And so that's what's happening with a stock like Nike, in my opinion. I think, yes, there is still a sentiment that needs to be built around it, but I ultimately think these individuals, these pundits that will say these things on CNBC or on X, that'll put out, they'll put out their tweets and they'll make these comments like, we're entering into an economic recession. They might say that thinking, one, it's going to get more views, but two, you have some type of fear mongering that happens. Then when you have some type of fear mongering that happens, you get more people to comment, you get more people to share it, and then all of a sudden everybody starts freaking out. Right? And that's what media loves. They love it. And so in the case here, I think it really comes back to Nike's starting to get their feet back under them. It is a beaten down stock. And a lot of people are tax loss harvesting in this case. I don't think it comes down to anything different outside of that. I think what you're going to see personally is that this is where I would get involved in the market, in a stock individually over the next 5 years. I think it will start to come back around, and we will see in the next 5 years possibly at more all-time highs for it. So I think be patient, look at things long term. Don't get feared. Don't have this fear instilled in you because you see somebody post that as a tweet. Instead, think back, well, why is it down? Why is Nike specifically down? Is Nike a direct representation of the entire population? Probably not. Probably not really. So start to think through those games and the games that these other people are playing, and then you start to really analyze it a little bit more strategically. I hope that helps somebody out there, and maybe I'm going to go inside and purchase some more Nike. Peace.